Am I live? And can y'all hear me? Because I'm using this guy right here. Sorry, I just hit the mic and I realized that was not the best of choices. Also, sorry, I didn't realize that because you go to set up a live stream on YouTube and I didn't realize that because I hadn't hit go live yet and I hadn't realized that the screen was visible to everyone. So everyone was just waiting as I was like figuring my shit out. How is everyone doing? I went to my first Pride yesterday, and that was really exciting. I've never been before, and I've actually been pretty intimidated kind of just by what I thought Pride was going to be like. I'm someone who's pretty introverted. You know, I have social anxiety. I don't always love being in big crowds and things like that. But it was actually really cool. It was really nice. Everyone was in a good mood. It was like great energy. And I got to march in the parade with the Stonewall Democrats. I was marching with my friends for a candidate that my friend Cassie works for named Katie Hill, who is trying to flip, I think it's the 25th district in Santa Clarita because it's a Republican district. So they're trying to flip it. And she would be like one of the first, I think the first like bisexual candidate if she's like elected. So that's really cool. It was really fun to like get to be part of it, I guess. It was really hot too. I definitely got a sunburn, even though I applied sunscreen 4 different times. So the sun is definitely homophobic, but I'm not mad. It's fine. Yeah, it was just really good. Someone said congrats to Morgan too. I know, I'm so proud of Morgan. Yeah, it was both of our first prides, plural. Well, it was the same pride. It was a singular pride. I should look at the comments probably. Portland Pride isn't until next week for us. Yeah, I know that I've heard that they try to like kind of spread out Pride in different cities so that like performers aren't split between different ones. So they want to perform at multiple Pride events. They don't have to choose just one. They can attend like multiple ones on different weekends. So Los Angeles Pride was today. I feel like I'm trying to remember what the other ones. I think Boston Pride, or not today, it was yesterday. I think Boston Pride was also yesterday, and there was like another big city or more. I think Sacramento Pride was also yesterday, but that's just what I heard someone say. I'm not sure if that's true. I'd like to go to a Pride, but I'm way anxious when I'm going outside. Yeah, I think Pride is, so since I was marching in it or whatever, I kind of feel like I was like, I really have to stick this out. And you march for like a mile, I think. And it's fun. I don't know. I think some of my friends were like, oh, I'm really proud of you. I'm surprised you're doing this. And I think with my social anxiety, like I don't really have a problem being part of a crowd. And when we were marching, it wasn't super crowded. I think it might have been more crowded like on the sidewalks and things. But the march wasn't too crowded. Someone said, is it really crowded and is the march fast paced? Could people with canes attend? It wasn't super fast paced. And we kept having to stop every time there was like a light. Because, you know, you're marching in the middle of the street and it's all sectioned off. But we kept stopping at like the red lights. I don't think it was super fast, but I also am able-bodied. I don't use a cane or any like mobile devices. So I think it really would probably just depend on like, you know, your own mileage, I guess. And like, because what wasn't super fast for me is subjective. You know what I mean? And I know like on Stevie tweeted about this, but on Saturday, Flaming Saddles, which is a popular like LGBT bar, you know, in West Hollywood, they turned away like a disabled person and said that people who are disabled shouldn't go to Pride, which is very fucked up on many levels. And I feel like it's just shitty. However, I do think that like it is crowded, so that could be a concern for like getting around. But it is really awful to say like you just shouldn't go to Pride, because there are many LGBTQ disabled people and they like deserve a place, just, you know, like the rest of us. So that's really fucking horrible. And I feel like if the comment they were trying to make was that it can be dangerous because it's so crowded, I think it's more on everyone else. It's everyone else's responsibility to make it more accessible and not just say like, you shouldn't go. You know what I mean? Like, do things to make it more accessible to disabled people. Don't just say that like they shouldn't be allowed to go. Just fucked up. And like, maybe your bar should be more fucking accessible. You know what I mean? Like, I get bar. And also, like, I went to, what bar was it? I went to Davy Wayne's, which is like, which was in West Hollywood, and it was really, 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 really crowded. And I can't imagine that it would be, there were lots of steps and things like that. And I can't imagine that that would be accessible for anyone using a wheelchair or even a cane. Like, it was hard for me to get around. And they were like limiting who they let in. So I don't know if it's like that crowded all of the time or if this was just because of Pride. But that's an issue of making your space more accessible. You know what I mean? Like, don't take it out on like disabled people. Overall, though, my experience was good. I had a really good time. I definitely saw I got a little emotional at one point. I saw a sign, and oh my God, I'm gonna get emotional when I talk about it. Someone was holding a sign saying like, if you are in the closet, you God damn it, why am I like getting all like, okay, whatever. If you're in the closet, you're still valid, and like we're waiting for you. And not like you have to come out, but like when you are ready, we're waiting for you. And that like got to me a little bit, and is getting to me now. I don't know. Yeah. So overall, it was a really positive experience, and I was glad I went, because I had this idea that I wouldn't like Pride because I do have social anxiety. But it really wasn't like my idea of what Pride was going to be like. I mean, some of it matched up. You know, obviously it was crowded. Obviously there was a lot going on. So, you know, it was very, I'm sure like it would be easy to get overstimulated. But it wasn't an environment where I felt like unsafe or uncomfortable. I guess the only times I did worry though, because you do see a lot of like police officers there, which is not my favorite thing. I don't love that. I know that like maybe white people feel safe around police officers, but I don't know. I don't think that's the best message. And historically, it's just interesting because historically, Pride and like just the fight for LGBTQ has been so entangled with police officers being violent and discriminating against LGBT people, you know, like with Stonewall and things like that. So it feels a little bit ironic and misplaced to have such a strong, I mean, I didn't see like a ton of police officers, but I would see them every like couple blocks. You know what I mean? Someone said, but cops keep you from being beaten by the homophobes and white men. Yeah, but also like there have been incidences where they have like been shitty towards POC, you know what I mean? And I feel like that sends a bad message, especially because there were like, you know, queer like Black Lives Matters protesters there and stuff. And like black, you know, there were members of like, there were like Black Panthers there and things. So it's not the best. I don't like the mindset of like, they're here to keep you safe, because historically they haven't been. They really haven't kept us safe. They have done a lot more harm than good. So I think if you're coming from the perspective of like, oh, cops are here to help me, then you're probably coming from more of a privileged perspective where you've never felt unsafe around police officers. And that shouldn't be a privilege, but it is. So much of like our identities and like how we navigate the world really determines our interactions with police officers. The Pride movement started during the Stonewall riots. Yeah, and that was literally cops harassing like trans women and just like LGBT people in general. Okay, whatever. Some of these comments are not really getting the point. Yeah, sorry, let me go through the comments. The other thing that kind of worried me too is like the police. So I used to work in my dad's restaurant in an area that was it was in California, but it was in a suburb that was more conservative leaning. So my experiences are that a lot of police officers are pretty conservative. Not all cops. Jesus Christ. Don't quote me on that. And also I have a conservative family member who is a cop. So we don't really see eye to eye on things. So part of me did get a little, like, it felt weird to be, because there were some chants like, fuck Trump, and like, just very kind of radical, more progressive chants, like anti-establishment kind of chants. And it just made me real uncomfortable to like be doing that as you see like police officers like kind of on the sides of the march. I don't know. I don't like cops, to be honest. That is my feeling. The good cops don't absolve the bad ones. A cop being good doesn't undo the corruption and violence against civilians present in law enforcement. Yeah, absolutely. Just because there may be individual nice cops who don't do their job in like a shitty way. The problem is that there is a system that is, as a whole, is discriminatory towards people of color. And I don't feel like, this is what I think. It's a system where it doesn't hold bad cops accountable. And there are so many bad cops who murder people of color. So it's not really a question of like, yes, there are individual bad cops, but it's also the issue of just the whole system not holding people accountable. We do not have a system in place that punishes cops at all when they like take lives from Black and brown people. So it's not really an issue of like, there are good cops. That doesn't matter because the whole like just police and criminal justice system in general is incredibly flawed and dangerous. Good cops will always cover for bad cops. That's the other thing too. Like, if you're such a good cop, shouldn't you see this injustice happening and like do something about it? If that is your job, is something that you believe in and you care about doing good, wouldn't you want to fix this system? You know what I mean? Anyway, this took a turn. This is not really what I wanted to talk about. I'm kind of nervous to talk about this. I don't know if this is the best idea. Yeah, I just got here. What's the bad idea about the live stream? I'm a little worried to talk about this because I don't know why I'm going to talk about this, because it's like now I'm hyping it up. But I don't know if this is the best idea, just because I want to talk about someone in my life who has been abusive. But it's a long story and it's messy. And my biggest thing is that I'm very worried about them seeing this and then harassing me further, because they have harassed me publicly and like on also, every single social media site and over text and like email and things like that. So I'm a little afraid to talk about it because I don't want to reignite that fire. And it had gotten to a point where they were leaving me alone. I thought it was over it, and I didn't really want to like add any more. Yes, Stuart. All the comments are just saying cat. Stuart, sit down. Stuart, just okay. Yeah, but I also don't want to refrain from talking about something out of fear of how another person might react, because I don't want to feel manipulated, because that has largely been their goal. And like so much of it has been them controlling me in the sense that I am afraid of them reacting badly. So I behave differently, or I didn't bring things up to them, or I refrained from speaking about things that bothered me because I didn't want them to like continue harassing me, And this has also very much been kind of my experience with like anti-feminist channels on YouTube in general, who, would target me like and make video after video after video and like send their hundreds of thousands of followers after me. A lot of it felt like, well, if I just ignore it, I won't be giving them attention and they'll leave me alone. But that's not the case. That's not true. They still will fucking come after you even when you ignore them. And that's what frustrates me when I do talk about harassment, is I will get people being like, oh, just ignore them. Like, talk about it. And they just want your attention. And that is, partially true that they do want attention. But I also don't think that necessarily stops, the harassment. But I do think that it silences people from speaking about these things, because you're kind of like blaming them for it. You're basically saying that if you talk about this thing, then you're at fault for, giving them more ammo to come after you, because, but it's not about anti-feminists. I also just want to talk about the idea of using social justice in a disingenuous way and kind of twisting it to fit your own, to be manipulative, I guess. And I know all feminists get accused of like using social justice to like guilt other people into things. But this was very much, I haven't really experienced this before, but this was very much a person who knew the social justice terminology, knew all the things to say, and used it to justify them being abusive. So with all of these warnings, and I know people are just going to be jumping into this and they're not going to know what I'm talking about, but that's just kind of the nature of a live stream. And I probably will private this afterwards. Oh, wow. We have 150 people in here. That's pretty good. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how much of this I want to. I don't want to like give all of the details, but at the same time, some of these details are very necessary to understand the full scope of the conversation. So I have a family member, I'll just say a family member, who has a history of being verbally abusive. And it's been a complicated thing. It's been it's been rough. And it's one of those things where they would be abusive, I would be crying, and then they would get mad at me for crying and being like, oh, you're making yourself the victim now, as they were like verbally abusing me and like screaming at me for, I borrowed a lamp one time from them, a lamp that I had originally given them. And then they came home and just blew the fuck up at me and screamed at me until I cried. And then they blamed me for crying about it. And it's one of those things where they are my family member. And the hard thing about abuse with family is that you still love them, and you can't like necessarily cut them out of your lives, because it is very complicated when it comes to abuse in families, because they don't always know they're doing it. They don't always care that they're doing it. But they're still part of your family, and it's very hard to actually remove them from your lives the way that you would with friends. Because when it comes to friends, I have had a few instances where, I'm a loyal person. I will be there for my friends. I am willing to put in a lot of emotional labor. And I don't think of it that way. I generally don't think like, oh, I'm putting in so much effort to make you feel better, like to be there for you. Because I think that's shitty. But there's a line when you notice that the other person is not affording you that same emotional labor. You know what I mean? Where you're putting in a lot more into the relationship than they are. So I am a very loyal person, but when you cross the line, I'm very much like, you're out. I'm done with you. We're not friends anymore. And I don't want to talk to you or really think about you ever again. And I'm not going to miss you. That's happened twice to me since I've been like an adult. One of them was a roommate, and one of them, the person who I'm talking about now, is my family member's fiance. And it's a lot. It's messy. I guess like buckle up, because I don't even really know how to talk about this, because there's just so much and it's so messy. Someone said, yes, destroy them. No, I don't. That's not helpful for me, because I don't. So with this, I really am I'm someone who like really, I want to handle all of my interactions with people in a way that I feel good about. I don't want to like kind of like hit anyone below the belt. I don't want to like talk to people in a way that I would like look back on and be ashamed about. And in this situation, I am proud of myself, because I don't think that I have like engaged with them ever in a way that like goes against my personal or my feminist values. So sorry, I just keep like, this is not very on track. Okay, yeah. So my family member, history of abuse. Their partner. I was close with them. We talked almost every day. And the thing is, they're like about my age, pretty much. We were friends. We would talk about feminism, social justice issues, self-care. We would go to Lush together and get face masks. When I had a bad day, they would be there and say like, oh, don't worry, like I have some weed or whatever, and we can just talk and like relax or whatever, chill. And that was nice. I liked that. But so the issue here, I'm mentally ill. My family member is mentally ill. My family member's partner is mentally ill. And I would say I'm just going to call the family member G. So G has borderline personality disorder. And I do want to be very sensitive to that because that is an incredibly stigmatized mental illness. A lot of people, you know, we'll post articles about BPD on Everyday Feminism, and we'll just get streams of people talking about how horrible, you know, people with BPD are, how they're abusive and narcissistic and awful, and you should cut them out of their life. And I think that's awful. I think like having borderline personality disorder doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you abusive at all. And I think that we should destigmatize borderline personality disorder. Absolutely. However, I think in this case, this person had BPD and was abusive. They weren't abusive because they had BPD, but they were abusive. It wasn't like that's not the reason they were abusive though. What? Sorry. I'm just seeing comments about Shoe on Head and Lauren Southern and ContraPoints, and I don't know what that's about. Yeah, anyway, so say it again. Having borderline personality disorder doesn't make you abusive. You're not a bad person, and you deserve love and treatment, and there needs to be more representation. Absolutely. So with that in mind, I would call them out on abusive behavior, and they would say that I was, and I wouldn't ever say because you have BP, say you are being abusive. And they would say that I was being terrible, a terrible mental health advocate because they're not being abusive. It's just their borderline personality disorder. So they would conflate their abuse with their disorder, I guess. And they would use that as a way to say that they weren't being abusive. So that's why I have trouble talking about this because I really don't want to cross, and let me know if I'm talking about this in a way that is shitty, because it is complicated and it's nuanced, and I really want to draw the line between abuse and mental illness. But I think that sometimes things that happen to you, like trauma and you know, like your things that happen in your life, can't explain why you are abusive, but it can't justify being abusive. Oh, and they also, yeah, okay. Sorry, I want to see what people are saying. Using it as an excuse could be considered gaslighting. No, yes, there was a lot of gaslighting. I will say that. And this isn't, so I've had situations where people have been abusive, but it's been really subtle. I've gaslit the hell out of myself because I have dealt with people my whole life who don't know that they are abusive, but they still are abusive. And the effects of that are still upsetting and traumatizing. You know, like someone not realizing or taking responsibility for being abusive doesn't mean that what they're doing doesn't have negative effects on you. And that's what's so hard. So I grew up with abusive people. I grew up with people who didn't realize that they were being awful and treating me with absolutely no regard for just me as a person and my own agency, giving me absolutely no respect, and then blaming me and saying that I was being dramatic when I got upset about it. Because I'm a sensitive person. I cry a lot. So they would be abusive. I would cry. And then they would say that I was being overdramatic and, you know, victimizing myself, which is victim blaming. So it's hard for me to talk about this without, even now, I'm like, ooh, maybe I'm just being dramatic. I'm sorry, I'm going to look at the comments and collect my thoughts. And I have a lot of I see a lot of familiar people in here commenting saying that they have BPD. So please keep me in check. Please tell me if I am handling this in a shitty way, because I really don't mean to. But again, my intentions don't necessarily mean, just because I have good intentions doesn't mean that I can't still be problematic. Someone says, a shitty person might try to justify abuse with BPD, but don't use that as an experience to attack everyone with BPD. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely don't want to make a generalization about everyone with BPD. This is my specific experience with a person who had BPD. But it was not their BPD that made them abusive. It was not their disorder that made them abusive. Even though they tried to use that to justify their abuse, they were abusive because of the way they behaved and treated other people. And it's not because of their disorder. Okay, Rose says that I'm doing okay. Let me know, because I really don't want to be shitty. And that's why I didn't want to, I don't know. It's just really hard for me to talk about this in a way that I don't want to contribute to stigmatizing personality disorders. Someone says, I get really nervous about calling anyone a shitty person. I know, and that's what's hard. They're not a shitty person. They just behave abusively. But it also is hard because I don't know. I get into a mindset where I start over sympathizing with them when they have done nothing to hold themselves accountable, done nothing to apologize, and still actively try and smear me on social media, basically. So I do want to sympathize, but I also don't want to get into the mindset where I am just over sympathizing with a person who has abused me. Fuck. I don't want to I hate this. I hate this a lot. Maybe I should have left out the BPD thing. Maybe, but that is part of the story of them gaslighting me, of I don't know. I guess, so here's the thing. Obviously depression is not nearly as stigmatized. So I don't want to say it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. Depression is still stigmatized, but much less stigmatized than personality disorders. And when I was not treating my depression, and obviously not everyone can get treatment, it's not accessible to everyone. This was a case, though, where my parents offered to get them treatment and they refused treatment. And I understand that you can have, they did have a history of having probably very traumatic experiences being hospitalized, forcibly hospitalized. So, and obviously there are a lot of mental health providers who can be awful and can contribute to abuse and stigmatization. There are mental health providers who still think of personality disorders as this evil and treatable thing. And a lot of people with BPD are told that they are manipulative and abusive because of their, disorder, which is not the case. So anyway, when I was untreated with depression, I was a really bad friend. It wasn't my fault necessarily. I did not have the tools to be there for another person when I was just struggling to survive every day and when I had social anxiety. So I pushed a lot of people out. I could not provide emotional support for them. I could not be a good friend. Again, plenty of people with depression are good friends. I still have depression, and I think I'm a much better friend than I used to be. So I think that my mental illness could explain why I was acting that way. But at the same time, I also understand it doesn't necessarily justify it. And I think if someone was upset with me for being a friend that like, pushed people out and like ignored them for like weeks on end, I can understand why they would also be hurt by that. Yeah, someone said the mental health sector is terrible to people with BPD. That is absolutely true. So I don't want to say like, oh, they didn't get treatment because it's fucking hard, especially like, I do think that they had very traumatic experiences with mental health, like hospitals and things like that. So that makes sense to me why they would not want to do that. Anyway, so we were friends. We talked every day. We, were supportive of each other. But I could not ignore that there were things that they would do and ways that they would talk to other people that made me uncomfortable. But I was afraid to say anything. And I think there was a level of manipulation there in the sense of like, I think with friends, I think you should be able to be honest and comfortable and even maybe criticize your friends, obviously in a compassionate way, in a kind way. But I think it's a red flag when you are afraid to bring up certain subjects with friends or partners or family members. I think that's kind of a red flag. It doesn't have to mean that they're abusive, but it's something to pay attention to. So there were a lot of things that they would do, the way that they would treat other people that made me uncomfortable and I disagreed with, and I didn't really think it was okay. I never said anything for a year, though. There was like a year of me not saying anything because I didn't want them to do that to me. I didn't want them to just kind of, because the other thing here is because of their history of trauma, they had a lot of trouble trusting people. And they would talk to me about splitting and how, they could go from thinking of you as their favorite person to absolutely hating you. And that must be very hard to deal with. I do not know what that is like. That it must be very hard to not be able to trust people because of, past trauma. So I want to be sensitive to that. But I was just really afraid of ever criticizing them, ever disagreeing with them, ever doing anything, because I didn't want them to split on me, I guess. I don't know what's happening in the comments. People just keep talking about the mods. Yeah, so that was there's just a lot of layers and it's messy, and I don't want to say that I don't want to generalize an entire group of people. I am only speaking on my experience with a specific person. So I don't even know where to go with this. Anyway, one of the other things too is I think that they did not have a lot of close people in their life. They didn't have a lot of friends. They've had, and I know that like they've struggled with kind of like pushing people out because people have treated them awful. People have been abusive and, just completely betrayed their trust. So they had trouble trusting people. And I think they had trouble sustaining long-term relationships. So I do want to be sensitive to that. So they only really had 2 people, like me and my family member who was their partner, that they could rely on, basically. And also they were both living at my parents' house. So that was another messy thing because my parents are problematic. My parents are capable of being abusive, and I have a history of that. I have a history of dealing with that. I try to maintain an okay relationship with my parents, but they've absolutely been abusive to me. You know what I mean? And, they also can be incredibly bigoted, and I'm not here for that. And whenever they would do something like that, I would talk to them about it, and I would be there to listen and, let this person, let G vent to me, and I would validate them because I have been there, and it's fucking shitty. I completely understand. I lived with them for, 21 years of my life. And it's really contributed to a lot of it's still contributed to, issues that I have in my relationships now. I have trouble with anger because, of the way my family would blow up at you. You know what I mean? I have trouble dealing with it and sitting with it. And I have trouble with feeling like when someone is mad at me that they just hate me and don't love me anymore. Because that's kind of the message that I got, I think, growing up. Cut off your entire biological family. Get a new family. Some people do that, and I support it. For me, that's not where I'm at, and I think everyone is. This is also what this stream is going to be about. It's going to be about setting boundaries. Everyone is allowed to navigate toxic people in their life, abusive people in their life, the way that gives them agency. Because abuse can really take that agency away from you. Sorry, I was sending a text. So this is something that has come up with some of my friends recently where I'm not going to judge you. There are a lot of people that stay in abusive relationships, stay in contact with abusive family. And they get a lot of shit from people saying well, why did you stay? And almost blaming them for it. I think if you stay, you are valid. And I think if you leave, you are valid. I want to give people, I think that's the one, when you feel so stripped of agency, the one thing that you can decide is whether or not you want to keep toxic people in your life. And also you can set boundaries. You can say I'm not going to be as close with them. I'll still keep them in my life, but I'm not going to answer their every beck and call. I won't, I'm not going to answer a call if I'm not in the right place to handle it, or I won't respond to them right away. I need to process it, things like that. And with family, I think that's one of the hardest situations to navigate because so much of it's just sometimes it can be impossible to cut your family off for different reasons. And there's just an idea that, you owe your family everything, family is forever is an idea that people seem to have. So that can be really hard to deal with. Anyway, sorry, if you are just getting here, this is not going to make any sense to you. So I'm sorry. Yeah, so I was their support system, one of their primary, probably their secondary support system. My family member who they were with was their primary. I was also a big support system for them. And I don't take that responsibility lightly. I will give a lot in relationships, and I don't want to make anyone feel bad about it. I don't want to feel like I'm doing you this huge favor because you're not. If you're someone in my life, I care about you and I want to be there for you to the best of my ability. But the issue was when they quickly realized they did not extend me the same compassion, the same emotional labor. When I don't want to say it was a fight. It wasn't a fight. Yeah. Okay. So I brought up earlier how they would interact with people in a way that made me uncomfortable and, quite frankly, was abusive. They would just go off on people. They were always getting into arguments with people online constantly every day. And when it happened, they really wanted me to come into those fights and back them up and defend them every time it happened. And I would do that a lot. But with what I said earlier, anger is hard for me. Conflict is hard for me. It can be triggering. It can bring up past experiences for me where anger is just so hard for me to like sit with and make space for. And I can't engage with that constantly. It's very draining. It's very triggering. And I have social anxiety. So conflict is just not good for me. And I've learned to deal with it better. I'm comfortable with like a healthy amount of conflict for the most part. But I just can't. And I don't think that you can expect someone to constantly fight all of your battles for you. I'll fight the big battles for sure. But when you're fighting with people every single day online, I can't. You can do that. That's fine. I'm not going to judge you for it. But like, I can't do that for my own like mental health. I just can't. So yeah. And another thing that I was uncomfortable with. So what happened basically, we had a mutual friend, this girl that I went to college with, and there's some background there. This was the person that made me realize I was bisexual because I had a big crush on them. And then I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm bi because I have a big crush on this like girl. And this girl I think was good, not perfect, but a good person. But they were really bad at communicating over text. It was just a lot of, it was a lot of, they just didn't always like communicate well over text. It was a lot of like misspelling and things like that and like text language. So I get that. It was, that was the thing that I would talk to this other person. I would talk to G about. We would kind of be like, yeah, they're the worst texter. So that was a mutual friend that we had. And there was a situation where, so let's call the mutual friend A. And the person I'm talking about is G. So G and A, I guess G met a friend that was friends with A. I'm sorry, this is so complicated. I don't know how to tell this. They had a mutual friend. And this mutual friend kind of made G very uncomfortable, kind of came on to them. And when G brought that up to A said, oh, that's really surprising. I had no idea. I didn't think of them that way at all, which not a good response. I agree. That's not a good response because it's kind of invalidating. When someone tells you that someone is maybe being kind of creepy, sexually inappropriate with them, you should be there. You should validate them. And you should hold that person in your life accountable. A did not do this. And I was there. I validated G. I said, you know what, you're right. That's not cool that they did that. It's kind of fucked up. And you're right. You're valid in being upset about that, for sure. But then it escalated, sometimes G had issues communicating things with people without just blowing up at them. And G just blew up at A in a way that I felt uncomfortable with, in a way that was like kind of verbally abusive, just went off on them. And I'm not saying that they weren't valid in being upset, because A, was a little invalidating, a little dismissive. And G just completely just blew up at them in a way that made me uncomfortable. As someone who has dealt with abuse and people blowing up at me my whole life, makes me uncomfortable. I don't like it. And I understand that G kind of like grew up in an environment where they learned to communicate differently. They grew up in an environment where getting in fistfights was normal, where using violence and yelling at people and, what could be described as physical and verbal abuse was very normalized. So that's how they handled a lot of situations. I didn't talk to them about this for a year. It made me uncomfortable. I didn't think it was right. But I kind of, they were very much of the mindset of, well, you don't understand. You didn't grow up in this world where physical and verbal abuse was normalized. And it was very much like, I grew up in this bad neighborhood where these things happened. And I wanted to be sensitive to that. Yeah. Okay. And someone said this is normalized in Latino communities and it's problematic. They were Latinx. So there was a racial component. There was a class component to it. So I didn't want to be dismissive or invalidating of that. And I didn't want to say that, I guess I didn't know how to express that. I didn't think that, engaging in the same verbal and physical abuse was okay, and threatening people, I didn't think that was okay. But I didn't know how to express that in a way that separated that from kind of their community, I guess. Because if I said that, they would say that this is another way that they would kind of use social justice to justify bad behavior. If I brought that up, I know what they would have said. They would have said that it's just a Latinx thing. And I just didn't understand, which kind of sucks. Cause like, there's a lot of toxic shit in Asian communities. There's a lot of like mental health stigma and a lot of, if your family's abusive, you keep it in the family kind of thing because of your own family pride, things like that. And I don't ever want to say that stuff is okay because, it's an Asian thing. I don't think that's an Asian thing. I think that's a problem within our communities because we've normalized their behavior. But I do think it's important to separate toxic behavior from that. I think we should work to undo that in our communities. I think we should like challenge that when it happens. But in a way, I think that they would use their upbringing as a way to justify their behavior and, say that it's okay because it's just, that's what they do. That's what everyone in their community does. That's also just a slippery slope of like justifying bad behavior. That made me uncomfortable. So their conflict style was threatening to beat people up. It was cursing people out. It was harassing people through text and Twitter and Instagram and all over the place. That was their communication style. So that was hard to navigate. So there was all of that. So anyway, backstory for people just showing up. A and G, mutual friends. I know both of them. Had a mutual friend. A's mutual friend was, I guess you could say, kind of like sexually harassed G. Not okay. G brought this to A. A reacted badly, invalidated them in a way that is not okay. And, I told them it wasn't okay. And then G reacted by being verbally abusive to A. And that made me uncomfortable. Yes, A did a thing that was bad and kind of contributed to a culture that is okay with sexually harassing people. Women, G is not a woman. G is a gender, but they also identify as femme. So in a culture that is okay with sexual harassment and assault against femme and like femme people and women. Sorry, it's mess. I told you it's complicated. It's messy. This isn't confusing. Okay, cool. Because some people are showing up and they have no idea what's going on. Okay. Trigger warning for abuse, but someone said, my dad would beat me and then an hour later, the whole family would act like nothing happened. I'm really, really sorry. That's fucking awful. Physical abuse was very rarely on the table growing up. There were rare incidents when it did happen. It wasn't a regular thing. It was much more like an emotional abuse thing. After the fact, everyone would act like nothing happened, though. And I'm really sorry because that's shitty. And then it's gaslighting. And then you feel, for lack of a better word, crazy. It makes you feel crazy. And also with abuse, memory is a thing that gets, because when something traumatic happens, when an abusive incident happens, a lot of the time, your brain works to repress that. So most of the time when something like that would happen, I was very triggering. I would just cry uncontrollably for a few hours. I'd go to sleep and then I'd forget, like I have a lot of memory gaps when it comes to abuse and traumatic incidences. And that is very, very common. That's super common for people who experience those kinds of things. Your memory your brain represses it. And that actually can contribute to more abuse because then you gaslight yourself and you say that, well, that wasn't that bad because your memory represses it. And it's very hard when you're arguing with someone who is gaslighting you to bring up the facts of, well, you did this and you did this and you did this because you forget, and it's hard to create a timeline. And then they use that as to say that, you're full of shit. Yeah. That someone said, write it all down so you can use it in therapy later. I took screen caps of everything. So I've already kind of forgotten some of the things that they've said and done. But if I go back and look at them, I, have that hard evidence there. Yeah. Are you okay? Do you want to talk about something else? You look upset. I'm okay. I might get a little low-key emotional, but I'm okay. And I'm comfortable with talking about this, and I am comfortable with, getting a little upset. I'm okay with that. Marina, what happened to you and all that, and what made you bring it up tonight? Here we go. Okay. Anyway, so all of that happened. I'm getting there. Sorry. It's a long story. So, sorry. The memory gaps you mentioned freaked me out because my friend experiences those when people are awful to her. Yes, that is the thing. I have a very bad memory. I have friends who have PTSD who just can't remember, not even traumatic events. They just can't remember entire conversations and hangouts and things that were unrelated to trauma. They just don't have them. They don't remember anything. And it's fucking hard. And that sucks. Yeah, so it's very important to note it wasn't their BPD. Mental illness may affect how someone is abusive, but doesn't make someone exactly. Yeah, that's what I said earlier. And I'm trying really hard to repeat that over and over and over. It does not make you abusive. It can affect how if you are abusive, it could be tied to that. It could all of our mental illnesses affect the way that we behave and engage with other people. It does not make us abusive. But if we are abusive, sometimes it can affect the way that, it can affect certain things. But you're not abusive if you have a personality disorder. You're not abusive if you have a mental illness. However, I think it's very important not to use that to justify further abuse, So for me, I grew up with that kind of thing being normalized, that kind of thing not being articulated like, this isn't abuse, this is just what a family is, So there are times when sometimes I get like upset about something and I can see myself almost like, because of I grew up learning that like behavior, there are times when I almost like, if I don't work on it, I catch myself almost like falling into that. You know what I mean? So I do have to work very, very hard to recognize when I have internalized a negative behavior used against me and when I am using that as a coping mechanism, because that isn't okay. So yeah. I don't remember primary school because of the bullying. Yeah. I've blocked out a lot of that. Okay. Anyway, after a certain while, a year or so of using toxic behaviors that they had learned growing up, toxic behaviors that were normalized to them. I just was very uncomfortable with it, never said anything. Also, they wanted me to fight a lot of their battles. They were fighting with someone almost every single day online, multiple times a day sometimes. And they were things like valid things to be upset about. They would see like an internet comment from someone who said something racist or shitty. Yeah, absolutely. Call it out. Call it the fuck out. You don't have to be nice to that person. They're being shitty. They're being oppressive. They're making other people who are marginalized feel bad and just, absolutely do that. Call it out. But then it would turn into, they were going into their private messaging them, private messaging their family, harassing them for like days on end, calling them pieces of shit, calling, all this stuff that after a while, it raised a lot of red flags. It was a pattern that I saw in them. I understand why they were upset, completely valid to be upset, but they did have they would harass other people. And that made me uncomfortable because I think like as a feminist, there are a lot of people online that are fucking awful. They're homophobic and racist and sexist and say awful things to me. But I also try really hard not to do it back. Because it's important to me to like engage in feminism with integrity and like engage in ways that I line up with my values. And my values are that I don't want to harass people. I don't want to abuse other people. That's how I feel. I want to hold myself accountable and I don't want to like start engaging in behaviors that I call out in other people. That's important to me. They didn't feel the same way. And yeah, I think you can call people out. I think you're absolutely allowed to be angry. I don't want to tone police anyone, but there is a line where you can be abusive to other people, and here's the thing. I've experienced abuse. It's not okay for me to be abusive to other people. I'm pretty much just like, someone's shitty, I call them out, or I just block them and don't engage. Not everyone deals with it that way. I don't want to like police how people engage with that. But yeah, it would come to a point where with A, G was being shitty. And not only that, G kind of would guilt me into fighting their battles. G would say, well, you are a public person on the internet. You are a public figure. You're a feminist. You have an audience and you have power. I want you to go fight my battles for me and use that to like tell them how wrong they are. And that made me uncomfortable too, because it did feel like they wanted me to utilize my power over other people, which makes me very uncomfortable, because I take that very seriously. When someone fucking says a vile comment to me online or on Twitter, I still block their name out usually. If I screen cap something, I try to block their name out if it's like a Twitter or, a public profile that they use a lot, because I don't want to send harassment that way. I'm also it's very important to me to like cultivate a community. They wanted you to be Phil DeFranco. That's true. I want to cultivate a community of people who don't harass other people. Obviously, you can't control who watches you. But I do think that content creators have some power over, the way that you talk about other people. If I just completely shit talked another YouTuber, even if they were shitty, even if they're, someone awful, I know that my comment section would just be a bunch of people, talking about what pieces of shit they are. You know what I mean? And I don't like doing that, especially if there is a likelihood that that person will see those comments. Anyway, God damn it. I'm sorry. This is just keeps getting off track. So they wanted me to fight all their battles. They would kind of guilt me into it. They wanted me to utilize my power to win arguments against other people, and kind of manipulate other people into like apologizing, or I just felt very uncomfortable with it. And I said it like pretty much in the way that I'm saying it now. I also know with BPD, if they feel like someone is mad at them, they feel unloved, which is something I can, I don't have BPD. It's not that as bad. But I can relate to that of like, feeling like, oh, this person doesn't love me anymore because they're mad at me. So I try to be really sensitive to that. I sent them a message and I said, I love you. I care about you. I don't want you to feel like I am attacking you. I'm not mad at you, but it does make me uncomfortable that you're asking me to do this all of the time. It does make me uncomfortable the way that you are. Also, the other thing is I had talked to A about it. And then I said, oh yeah, A messaged me about this. And it wasn't a bad message. A was just confused and wanted perspective on it, because A also like kind of respected my opinion and stuff. So I wanted to talk to them and handle it in like kind of my own way. And then A just went and just cussed them out and was like, don't ever fucking talk to Marina again. Don't do this. Blah, blah, blah. I didn't like that. I don't want to be defended that way. I don't co-sign that. And I said that. I said it made me uncomfortable. But I also was very much like, I love you. I care about you. I'm not mad. This makes me uncomfortable. And then it escalated just so much from there. So fucking much. Oh my God. They said they were confused. They said that I was attacking them. And I understand that, maybe in their perspective, like maybe like they probably did, they felt that way. I think they had trouble separating, because of like their trauma and like the way that people treated them. They had trouble trusting other people. And, you know, I think they often felt attacked. I tried really, like really hard to communicate that that's not how I felt. And yeah, so that happened. Oh God, I have messages. Hold on. My internet could work a little bit better. That would be great. Fucking Jesus. Also, I'm okay. I think people think that I'm more upset than I am. I'm okay. I'm okay. You know, if I like tear up or something, it's okay. I'm okay with that. You know, I cry a lot. It happens. Vodka? No, I'm drinking coffee. Vodka. I'm just a whiskey. It is okay to cry. I agree. It is okay to cry. Yeah, I know some people get uncomfortable with that. I want to find the thing. I want to find a message that I sent, but I can't. Also, I do have allergies. I'm sniffling a lot. I have teared up at certain points, but like also it's allergies. So that's why I'm sniffling. I'm not, you know, it's okay, guys. It's all right. All right. Apparently I just can't fucking open these messages because Yahoo messages up. But were they trying to manipulate or control you by the escalation? It felt like it. I think they genuinely thought that I was attacking them as much as I think I did everything in my power to, you know, be gentle. I was very, very gentle, I think. That was another issue is I'm okay, like being gentle and like you know, criticizing people in a way that is kind and meeting people where they're at. And I understand that they needed a little more like gentleness, I think, to talk to them about things and not feel like I was attacking them and not feel like I was abandoning them, because they did have like some abandonment issues. So I didn't want to like do that. So I tried really hard to be gentle. The issue though is that someone says sometimes no level of gentleness can separate kind criticism from this person hates me now and thinks I'm horrible. Yeah, and I really want to be sensitive to that. The issue though, I think, is that someone said it sucks when people don't return that gentleness. They were the least gentle person I think I've ever met. So it just felt like there was kind of like an imbalance there of me like being so careful. And I don't want to say that like it was a burden to do that, because I have friends, you know, I have friends that have anxiety. I need to treat them a little bit differently to make them feel better. You know, I have friends who, you know, like I believe in treating people the way that I don't believe in treating everyone like the exact same way, because everyone needs different things. Everyone, like, you know, maybe mental illness will make it so that they need more validation in certain areas. I have friends who like sometimes I'm bad at like kind of messaging people back, but I also have friends who have explicitly told me like it makes me feel like you hate me. So I will be really careful and always message them back, because I just don't want to make them feel like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I want to be sensitive to people's needs. I want to, you know, treat people the way that they, I think, need to be. So yeah, I was very gentle. I didn't have a problem with that. You know, I didn't think that's not a burden. You're not a burden to me if I need to like be more sensitive or gentle or like, you know, very validating or whatever. Yeah, someone said accommodating as a friend versus walking on eggshells. That is kind of how that is a huge red flag for me. How I have like realized when things have been abusive is when I'm walking on eggshells. Yeah, there's a difference between like being supportive and gentle and kind and, whatever. And like maybe because I have some friends who are just very much like from the Midwest and like, you know what? Just fucking tell it to me straight. If I'm being a jerk, call me out. And like, I will, you know what I mean? But then I have other people who like have trouble dealing with criticism. So I'm going to be very, very careful. You know what I mean? I'm going to be like, hey, I love you so much. I just want to bring this to your attention. I want to be, gentle. I keep using the word gentle, but, some people I think need to be handled more gently because of their experiences or their mental illness or, past trauma, things like that. Someone said, you got to remember your own needs too, though, right? You deserve as much support and validation. Yeah, that's the point that I was trying to get to, is that I was so incredibly gentle and they reacted with just verbal abuse. Honestly, they were someone who was very hard on the outside and would treat everyone very much like, I don't give a fuck, fuck you, but stuff like that. But if you just ever so slightly criticize them in a gentle manner, then they would say you were being abusive. So it was very hard with that disconnect to feel like that was an equal relationship for me. Yeah, it was just like, why are you not returning the same gentleness? Why am I handling you with kid gloves? And you are just, when I do this and I try so hard to be soft, you are just reacting by, just being like a cactus. You know what I mean? It just was not fair. That is such an unhealthy dynamic. Yeah, I agree. That is an unhealthy dynamic. And that was what happened with my old roommate. It's when it becomes unbalanced. They were dealing with really shitty, toxic partner. And, I was there for them and they cried pretty much every night about it. I hated their partner. Their partner treated them awful. But I was, I wanted to be there for them. And I'm okay being that shoulder to cry on. They didn't do the same thing for me. They were not there for me at all. So it reaches a point where like, it's not balanced. I'm putting in so much more than the other person is. Yeah. So that's kind of where I draw the line, to be honest. It's shitty. So yeah, I said, we didn't talk for a couple days, I ever so gently criticized them. And they told me they felt like they were being attacked, and I tried really hard to validate them. And at the end of the, I don't think there was anything else I could do, I think, in that situation. Because communicating is something that I think is a strong suit of mine. I try to be very diplomatic, and I try to, communicate with people based on their needs, kind of like, some people like certain communication styles. Other people need different communication styles. I want to be gentle. I want to be soft. I try to be empathetic. You know what I mean? So yeah. Couple days pass. I'm like pretty sure like they're upset. But I had, optimism that we would talk. It might get messy, but it would be okay. I was like, okay, I'm willing to work this out. 2 days later, I get a message from them saying, you know what? I tried to think about your point of view and I thought it was fucking stupid. And like, I don't give a fuck but literally like, fuck your feelings. And I was like, okay, that's my line. That's my line. Bye. Sorry. If you're not my friend, if you're just a random person, you don't have to care about my feelings. That's fine. If you're my friend, I want you to care about my feelings when I am like so gently handling yours. You know what I mean? So it was kind of just like I was putting in so much empathy and gentleness, and they were giving me just the complete opposite. And then I also sent them a 4-page. I just want to say, like, I wrote out a 4-page letter where I tried, I really explained where I was coming from. I said, this is my relationship with anger. This is my relationship with my family. I cared about you. I have no problem. Like, I want to be there and empathize, and I'm okay with calling other people out for you. But it's more when I feel like you are guilting me into doing it, and you're putting me in situations that are uncomfortable and triggering for my mental health, for your own. Someone just said boundaries. Yes. One of the big problems here is they had no sense of boundaries. So they just, I think, and that's an issue I think some people can have, like with their, like, with BPD and their, like, favorite people. It can sometimes be hard to, like, navigate boundaries. And I think in a healthy relationship, like, I am super willing to do that. I'm super willing to give 110%. But when I, like, quickly realized that, like, I ever so gently criticized something that you did that made me uncomfortable, and then you just completely blow up at me, and I just need to handle you with kid gloves and be so soft for you, and then you just respond with, like, your feelings are fucking stupid. Fuck your feelings. I don't give a fuck. Like, what? Like, what? I could not have been gentler in that situation, I think. And at the end of the day, I am not required to fight all of your battles for you. I will do it if we're friends because I care about you, but I don't want to feel like you're manipulating me into doing that. I don't want to feel like you're guilting me into doing that. I don't want to worry about, like, oh, if I don't, engage, if I don't, like, go bitch out some, like, stranger that they're fighting with that day, the third person they're fighting with that day online, that they're gonna, blow up at me. I just don't like walking on eggshells in friendships, and I don't like feeling like I can't hold my friends accountable. And that was the other thing, is they were so big on accountability. They were constantly talking about holding themselves accountable, holding other people accountable. But when it came down to it, that did not match reality. So it was just also another situation of, like, them using social justice language and, like, big words to justify bad behavior and to, like, continue being abusive, and to manipulate other people. It's fucking messy. So yeah, and even my family member was like, at first, they said, like, I'm really sorry. It's not okay they treated you that way. I'm telling them how fucked up it is, and I'm making sure that they understand that it's not okay to treat someone like that. And then the next day I get a text, or like a week from then, I get a text being like, I think you owe me a fucking apology. And I'm just like, really? It does not seem like you've made them understand that what they did was okay, not okay. And, my whole family also was kind of involved in this because they were living at my parents' house. And my mom asked my family member about it and said, did you know that, your partner is sending messages like this to your sister, or family member? I was trying to be vague. Fuck. But, and he said, yeah, I was sitting right there when they sent it. So it's kind of like, cool, you're just enabling this. I don't trust you anymore, and I said, I don't trust them. I don't trust my family member anymore. And he just repeatedly was like, no, you can trust me. You can trust me. But then repeatedly did things prioritizing this person. I know that was their fiance, although they did get engaged after 2 months. Sorry, shitty. That doesn't matter. That's not relevant. SJW language is abusive. Fuck off. It's not, but any language, any terminology, I think can be used to justify, any manipulative person can manipulate, can use certain ideologies or language or whatever to manipulate other people. That's what rhetoric is. Yeah, so there's that. And here we go. I forgot about this part. I'm being so vague to protect their identity. I didn't even want to say my relation to this person. They used my full name, my username. They did a 2-hour live stream talking about how shitty and abusive I was when they were being shitty and abusive. They did a 2-hour live stream on Instagram. They did post after post after post on Tumblr using my full name and everything, trying to smear me online, basically. And that also scared me because I was like, I don't want them to tell lies, and I don't want them to because I'm someone who very much believes that I take accusations of abuse super seriously. So then that just gets really messy kind of with my whole it just gets messy. You know what I mean? Because I believe that most of the time when people are saying this person's abusive or this person assaulted me or this person whatever, I take it seriously. But then I got in the situation where they were turning it around and saying I was the abusive one. And I got really scared. And that's also what's hard too, is often in dynamics of abuse, your abuser sometimes will try and twist it and make it out like you are being the abusive one. That's another dynamic. It's fucking messy. So yeah, I was scared, really scared for a while. But then I realized I have receipts. I documented everything. And oh shit, is it buffering? Is it? Oh, okay, it's okay. All right, so it's okay. Yeah, so cool. It seems fine. Anyway, most people are saying it's fine. So yeah, that scared me, but I also very much realized I have evidence of everything that happened. I screen capped everything. And I'm comfortable, if worse came to worse, putting that online and saying, okay, here's what happened. And I never once engaged with them in a way that I would be ashamed of. I never engaged with them in a way that goes against my own personal values, my own feminist values. Yeah, so that kind of gave me some solace of if this became a thing. Someone said, damn, if only I could screen cap my brother yelling at me for opening the refrigerator the wrong way. Honestly, yeah. I mean, sometimes I really do wish that I had video evidence of my family member when he did blow up at me for borrowing a lamp from him. Because, it would be easier. It would be easier to point out, if I did want to say, hey, you've been abusive and here's some receipts. That would be easier. But also for myself, I could look back on it and, not gaslight the hell out of myself. Because as I said earlier, when traumatic things happen, when people are abusive, your memory sucks. And you forget gaps of time and and your brain wants to protect you, so it represses it, and it tells you it's not actually as bad as it was. Over time, you kind of forget all of the little details, and then you're like, oh, I guess it's not that bad. I'll go back to this person, Yeah. So that was, yeah. And it just sucked because I was really upset. This whole situation was really upsetting for me. But I was so much like, I need to take the high road, which is also kind of how I deal with like harassment from like anti-feminists who like send their hundreds of thousands of followers after me. It sucks because like I really am like, I'm going to take the high road, which sounds kind of condescending, but some people are shitty. Some people behave in shitty behaviors. And I'm not going to do that. So, yeah. My nose is like running and it's bothering me. So I didn't post about, if I did a couple posts and I deleted them because I was like, I don't want to add fuel to the fire. Never used their name, never used their handle. Didn't really want to because I do have a bigger audience than them, so I really don't want to spread any, send any harassment their way. You know what I mean? It's just not and I've publicly said that I don't think it's okay for bigger creators to kind of target smaller creators because it does create this hostile environment. And also whoever has the bigger audience is going to have more support. It doesn't matter if they're right or wrong. A lot of their audience is going to just defend them no matter what. So, they didn't do me the same courtesy. They filled my the tag, my tag with a bunch of shit, a bunch of and also when I said, to my, my family member, I said, the way your partner is treating me is not okay. It's abusive, and I will not stand for that. This is where I draw the line. And then they posted about me saying, ugh, Marina's abusing her, abusing my partner now, abusing her brother. Yeah. Which is wild because he has a long history of being verbally abusive to me. So I just felt crazy. You know what I mean? It just made me feel like there was so much gaslighting. And it's just kind of you have different rules for how everyone else needs to treat you and your partner. And you don't live up to those rules. You don't follow those rules. I think it's when people have different rules for other people than they have for themselves, when that becomes really imbalanced and toxic. Yeah, so it was just a situation. And I'd also never, that's another thing, I walked on eggshells, and I never told them that my, their partner had been abusive to me. I never said anything because so much of it was well, it's not my place. I don't want to ruin a relationship. You know what I mean? I don't want to do that. It's not relevant. It was relevant. It was my place. I could have done that if I wanted to, but I didn't. So if I even brought that up after the fact, they would just think I was making it up. Well, why didn't you say it sooner? So yeah, that's a lot. Anyway, it was fine. Everything was fine. I was also kind of pissed because I kind of feel like it's messy because my family member, I do really feel like they are being manipulated in this situation. There's also some power dynamics there. This person is a dom, and I think my brother is a sub, and that can be consensual and fine. I don't know how healthy it is in this situation, though. This is a person that seemingly needs to be dominant and controlling in a lot of relationships. So that worries me, but at the same time, I'm gonna protect myself. There's nothing I can do to like say to them. But it's just gonna get back to, you know, this abusive person. If I were to say, you know what, to my family member, I think they're being abusive, they would just say it. They would just relay it back to that person. And that person would come after me, you know? And also, I feel like my family member has enabled them being abusive to me and stood by them. So someone said, "Oh my God, this just gets worse and worse." I know. I also just want to say, this kind of shit does not happen to me. This is not a thing that like abuse, but like has happened to me, but never at this level where it was so like much. It was so much. Like it's usually not escalated, you know, to this point. This is a deep rabbit hole. It gets worse. Yeah, I tried to warn everyone. This is messy and there's a lot, so much. I hope your bro ain't a male feminist too. He has a pin on his jacket that says, "This is what a feminist looks like," and it pisses me off. It fucking pisses me off. That's not what a feminist looks like. That's whatever. So that escalated quickly. Yeah, so I don't know. I think I've gotten most of the point across. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so it was fine. My brother stopped talking to me, even though, you know, he had said, like, "You can trust me. It wasn't okay how they treated you." Over time, I think he kind of changed his tune. I think, you know, I don't want to say he's his own person. He has agency, whatever. But I do think he is also kind of manipulated in this relationship sometimes. So over time, it went from like, "It's not okay that they treated you that way," and I told them that, to, "I'm perfectly okay as this person harasses you repeatedly over text and you block them, and then they send, you know, a text from a different number, and like you have to block them on every other social media site, and also like block my, you know, family member on social media sites because they're harassing me, to the point that my family has to step in and talk to my, you know, other family member and say, it's not okay. You can't let your partner harass Marina like this." Yeah. So I don't need a restraining order. It's not that bad. Also, I live 7 hours away, so that makes me feel safer. I don't think they're going to be violent. Is maturity a factor? Yes. They're my age, but they are not very mature. Yeah, so didn't talk to my family member for months and months. It's been about 3 months since that happened. And there's a lot of other things I could talk about. I'm not going to. That makes this even messier. And then it was my birthday on Saturday, and he messaged me saying, "Happy birthday, loser," which, okay, that's how we're going to start this conversation. And you know what? I'm still upset with him, and I didn't say anything. I said, "Thanks. How have you been?" And then instead of, "Hey, I'm doing okay, doing great. How are you?" it was, "Can you unblock G's Tumblr so they can reblog a post?" Really? Really? Happy birthday, loser. Anyway, this is really what I wanted to talk to you about. I ignored it. That's kind of been my whole thing, is like, anything that I do, like if I say anything, if I engage with them, it's just going to make G like get all worked up again and like start harassing me or posting about me online again. So I ignored it. And then that was on my birthday. And also I was doing things. It was my birthday weekend. I was out. I ignored it. Whatever. And then the next day I was at Pride. I was at Pride from like 10 in the morning. So, and also, yeah, like I got up early and then I got there at like 10. We didn't finish marching until like 3:00 because there was like hours and hours of waiting and like, whatever. And then I was out with my friends and we saw a movie and, I didn't get home until pretty late. But they sent me yesterday. Okay, this stuff isn't relevant. But I think they were kind of like, oh, Marina ignored me. So I guess I'll tell her how I'm doing. So he did. And then he continued to be like, oh, I only ask because, I don't even know how to talk about this one. It's like, okay, there's a lot of like fucking backstory with this bullshit. G was content warning for assault, was sexually assaulted. And I had made a post basically saying like, this is this person, they work here at Target, and that's the Target that they went to. So every time they went in, they would see the person who assaulted them. So I made a long post saying, this is what this person looks like. They are an abuser. It's not okay. And, Target's being shitty, whatever. I did that because they asked me to. And also like, I want to be supportive, I guess. And good praxis. I don't know how to say that word. Yeah. So, and that was a long time ago. And since I have since blocked G on every social media site because they were harassing me and I did not really feel comfortable. And that's the other thing is it's like, I have to be public on everything. You know what I mean? Like I do YouTube. I am like kind of like a public figure of sorts. So normally what I would do if I wasn't in that situation, I would have made my shit private because I just felt really like, oh, they're going to be looking at all of my stuff and I don't want them to. But I didn't have that privacy because I couldn't have that privacy. And I just, I'm a visible person online. So there was really nothing I could do so that they like could not see my stuff. And that made me uncomfortable. So, but I did block them on Tumblr. Obviously they can just go onto another account, log out, whatever, and still see my Tumblr. But I had blocked them so they couldn't reblog that post, I guess, that I made a long time ago. And then they, and so apparently the person who had assaulted them came back around and is trying to harass them, is what my brother said. I get if you don't want to do that, but it's just about that post, promise. And I'm not going to do that. I've blocked you and you've done nothing. I blocked you because you made me feel harassed and unsafe. And you continually like targeted me everywhere. And you've not held yourself accountable for being abusive. And you have actually like messaged me saying you owe me a fucking apology, with multiple numbers that I've blocked. You've tried to make me use my like the fact that I'm a public influencer or whatever, to intimidate and manipulate other people. And that makes me uncomfortable, Yeah, exactly. Someone said, why don't they make their own post and attach whatever info they need? Exactly. There was no reason to bring me back into this. There was zero reason to bring me back into this. And I blocked them for a reason and they did nothing to gain my trust back. That's the thing is the second I tried to set a boundary with them, they just completely like could not deal with it and started verbally abusing me and just kind of threw the whole friendship down the drain. And this definitely seems like a way to like sneak their way in there again. Another way to get in, cross boundaries. Yeah, someone said trying to cross your boundaries again. That's what it felt like, because they have trouble with boundaries. So I didn't say anything. I was like, I've set boundaries and I don't want to engage with this. And I've been very clear about that. I've been very clear. And as much as they have said in the past, like, okay, I'll leave you alone, I'll respect your boundaries, their behavior does not match up with what they've said. That doesn't seem true. And they're also using my family member to get to me because they know they can't contact me elsewhere. And then they posted about it because I was out all day, so I didn't respond. It was my birthday weekend. It was Pride. I was doing shit. There's just like a lot of reasons. And then they like posted online, basically they took a screen, they went to my blog because I blocked them, but you can still see my blog if you log out. So they're still looking at my blog. They went to it. They took a screenshot of the post and posted it with the caption, like, taking a screenshot because like Marina's rude ass won't let me like reblog a post about my abuser for some reason. And it's like, for some reason, you harassed me repeatedly. That's a reason. That's a valid reason to be blocked. Jesus Christ. And it's just this feeling of like, I just want you to leave me alone. And like every time something, they just like need to dig their nails back in. But it's just so hard to walk that line because you don't want to you feel like if you engage, you're going to, they're just going to get more ammo and they're just going to get worked up about it again. And they're going to keep harassing you. Like that's what they want. But even when I ignore it, it still happens. Could they potentially use the stream against you? Potentially. I might need to make this private after the fact and only make it available for like Patreon, maybe. The mic is glow. Oh my God, it is. The sun is like hitting it. Yeah, right there. That's really funny. The mic is glowing. Anyway, so I just wanted to talk about it. I don't know. I'm going to keep ignoring it, but also they might see this. I have no way of like knowing if they're watching it, Also, I do want to say that like I would not have befriended them under normal circumstances, just because I kind of have like a level of I'm introverted. I have social anxiety. I don't have a lot of I don't like having a ton of friends that I don't really like, or a ton of friends that I don't know very well. I'm kind of protective of like my time and my energy and like who I, can be there for. And I want to foster positive and when I say positive relationships, I don't mean relationships where there's never conflict. I don't mean relationships where there's never an argument. I just mean relationships where I can communicate and I feel safe. And I feel like even if we do get mad at each other, we can talk about it and that's okay. I want to hold space for people's emotions. I want people to hold space for my emotions. But at the end of the day, when a relationship gets to the point where I cannot gently criticize you, I can't hold you accountable for anything. And the second I do, you'll just snap at me and you'll turn on me and you'll be abusive and, start harassing me. That's clearly a problem. It's clearly a problem. And this is a person that was brought into my life because of, my family member who has a history of being verbally abusive and blowing up at me and, and not regulating his anger. And I know they both have issues at regulating their anger. And I don't want to say that it's okay to be angry. I think with a lot of people, like, we're taught that we're not allowed to be angry. Marginalized people, women, like LGBT people, whatever. We're taught that we're not allowed to be angry. And it is okay to be angry. The problem is when that anger crosses the line into just being verbally abusive. And I tried to really like articulate that in, the letter I sent them. And then their response was just blah, whatever. It's not my sister. I don't have a sister. Yeah, so is it A or G? It's G. A was someone involved in this. A was invalidating and kind of dismissive. My bad, Marina. I goofed that up. You goofed it. Sending a 4-page letter. And also, like, I spent a long time. I also talked to a therapist about it, and he like gave me tools to I forgot the word for it, but there are like 4 steps when you're like dealing, kind of doing conflict management with other people. And the first is to God damn it, what was it? It's like explain the situation, explain what factually happened. Then like explain what you feel about it, I think. I'm really misremembering this wrong. There's another step I'm forgetting. And then the last step is like kind of like explaining why I, had a problem with their behavior. So I was also just really trying to use like diplomatic tools. I had like multiple people read it over, and they still just like, first they responded with like, ha ha ha, fuck you, I don't give a fuck about your feelings again. And then the second time they responded with like a longer letter that was a little more nuanced than that. It's a low bar, but also very much was clear that they could not hold themselves accountable, and they did not take any responsibility and only really could see their like own perspective. So yeah. Anyway, that's the thing I've been thinking about. It's been like frustrating. Does anyone have any questions or comments or anything? I don't know. I don't know if this was a productive stream. I don't know if I really needed to do this, so I might private it. Just for my own like kind of mental well-being. Anyway, here's Wonderwall. I don't know. And also, this is such a specific situation. I don't even know if this is really useful, for talking about abuse. This is not like going to be applicable to anyone. I think there are parts of it that people in the comments have related to. But I think if I were ever going to make a video about like abuse, I would need to make it more vague and also more applicable and with like more of a message, because this is me kind of just like sorting through my feelings. And it isn't like, I know some people like kind of have a relationship with like the internet where sometimes they don't have anyone else to talk to about things, and they kind of end up relying on the internet to sort through their feelings, which in itself can become unhealthy. I don't feel like I needed that because I do have people to talk to. So again, I don't really know. I don't know if this was a good idea, which is why the title of this was, I think it was, this probably isn't a good idea. Do I feel better after this stream? Yes and no. I like talking about things, but also like it doesn't really solve anything. I'm still upset. I still am worried that they're gonna keep, doing shit, not gonna let it go. And I also just feel real bad about this whole situation with my family member where like I basically don't have them in my life until this, as long as this relationship is a thing. Which is painful and confusing because there's a lot of feelings there. There's a lot of like past hurt and, hurt now. And I don't really know how to rebuild a relationship. I don't really know. I just don't think that's possible while they're together. And I don't want to like sway that decision, like obviously they can stay together if they want. But those are my boundaries. I can't feel okay when I know that you are enabling and supporting an abuser and like prioritizing them. So it does suck though that I feel like I just don't have this family member in my life, except when they message me happy birthday loser. I don't know if I can trust them. I don't think I've ever been able to trust them, to be honest, though. I've always felt like they're like, them being nice to me was conditional. And it is conditional. Very clearly it's conditional. Did they mean loser as a playful insult or an insult? I think they meant it as a playful insult, but we were not at a place where that was okay. I'm not at a, with everything considered, you don't just get to go and like playfully insult me. That's not really how relationships work. Hope you can find a positive mental space, even with messy family stuff. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. I had a lot of anger and a lot of feelings about this, especially when this first happened. And, I was a little bit mad yesterday when, all this like came up for me again. But I handled it, I think, with integrity. I didn't do anything. I didn't engage in a way that goes against my values. I've said that multiple times, but it's true. And I feel like I am in a mentally like stable enough place that I can handle this and it sucks. It's not great. It's not my favorite. It's complicated and messy, but I'm okay and I will be okay. And I also know that like my feelings are valid. I'm allowed to have boundaries. And I don't feel guilty about cutting out abusers. I don't feel guilty for having a line. I'm a loyal person, and I will put up with quite a bit. But when you cross that line, I know that I am worth more than like the way that abusive people treat me. Anyway, I'm going to go now. So thank you for hanging out.